All right, YouTube, we need to have a little bit of an intervention for Jeb Bush because word on the street is that sharpened pencils and shoelaces and drain cleaner and things like that have been confiscated from his campaign bus. You may have seen, I saw it before it was on TV. Thought it was hilarious when I saw it linked on the internet. Jeb Bush's "Please Clap" video. Just look that up on YouTube. There's no reason to link in the description. Just put Jeb Bush "Please Clap," and it's all you're going to see. Sort of like Ben Carson the other day going after Ted Cruz. You know, look up his name. That's all you're gonna fucking find. Jeb Bush has gone from somebody who very, very early on, like in the first few weeks of the race when polling first began, he was the front runner. And Donald Trump got into the race and Jeb Bush collapsed. He was no longer the front runner. Since then, he has continuously declined across the board. And he's getting very, very desperate. One thing that Jeb has tried to do is cast himself as sort of the fun, I guess, slightly tubby party animal candidate or something. You saw it with his guacamole nonsense, with the fucking plastic turtle shit. You see him trying to pull a George W. Bush. I don't know why he thought this was a good idea. He should have branded himself as, well, I'm not my brother. I'm the smart, much taller one. He's actually 6'3". He's actually an inch taller than I am. So, it's not like he can really pull off the little shrimpy funny dude act that George W. did. But it must be sad for Jeb because the Bush family is not particularly known for its intellectual capacities. George W. went to Yale, and we all know that he only passed his courses. He was drunk probably half the time. He passed his courses because of his family name. I mean, who's going to kick him out when he's making, 6-7-figure contributions to the fucking university? That's the problem with Ivy League universities, by the way, in this fucking country. Some big name idiot, some fucking total asshole shows up and continues to act like an asshole and slacks off and then magically gets straight A's because their daddy happens to be a former president or something. In the case of Jeb, though, it's extra sad because he's showing himself to be the least competent of the entire Bush family. Daddy Bush did better when campaigning. George W. did better than Jeb is doing right now, intellectually speaking. So it's very, very sad. Jeb isn't suffering from his policies. That is, right now, people have cast around for outsiders. The winner of Iowa is kind of an outsider. Ted Cruz, he's the Evangelocon Santorum-esque candidate. Then there's Trump, who came in second. He's obviously an outsider. Rand outperformed. He was obviously the libertarian-leaning figure. So of the top five there, basically the only true establishment candidate was Rubio, who came in third. Carson is an evangelical. Cruz represents the new wave insiders, the Evangelocons, which are basically, they're just neocons who happen to have a Tea Party hat on. Trump represents the self-funded candidate. Rand represented the libertarian-leaning candidate, and then you have Rubio. And why I say that is this, why Jeb is not suffering from anything policy-wise. The policies that Jeb Bush has talked about, the Bush-era style policies that he supports, are basically identical to what Rubio wants. They're almost completely the same. They're not also very far removed, by the way, from what Ted Cruz has espoused, other than Ted Cruz is more open about praise Jesus. Jesus is the real president if I'm the one that gets elected. Other than that, they're basically the same. So why is it that Rubio comes in third in Iowa and is, kind of polling second or third or sometimes fourth, depending on which poll you ask, in New Hampshire? The reason is this. It's the name that has dragged Jeb down. Because very briefly, he was the only establishment candidate in the race with any name recognition at the time when he first got in. As soon as Donald Trump swept everything up, Jeb was completely forgotten about. Nobody wants another Bush in office. They don't care about Bush's policies even. I mean, anyone supporting Rubio, that's what you're going to get if he's elected. Hillary's the same. Cruz is basically the same. A lot of these people, they basically are the same on most issues. Let's face it. On drugs, they're exactly the same. On gay marriage, and they're exactly the same. On immigration, they're the same. They're exactly the same on taxation and everything else. They get different plans. At the end of the day, they're going to do the same fucking thing. They're all a bunch of insiders. They're controlled by the same people. We just heard that Bain Capital, which was, Romney company of note in the last election that everyone had a fucking problem with, was going to do a fundraiser for Hillary Clinton. Hillary, by the way, completely flubbed it on Goldman Sachs. People still haven't put two and two together and said, why is Ted Cruz's wife on the board of a company that's also giving hundreds of thousands to Hillary to speak? They haven't quite figured it out yet. I wonder if he's actually the outside candidate that he brands himself as. Here's a pro tip. No, he's not. His ideas, 99% are on board with what the rest of DC fucking wants. As for Jeb, though, it's the name. It's the fact that one of the early and often mantras of this campaign, as soon as Hillary jumped in, was no more Bushes, no more Clintons. If it had just been Jeb running, he might have escaped that. And if it had just been Hillary running and Jeb was nowhere to be seen, there was nobody with the last name Bush in the race, people might have forgotten the fact that these are dynastic candidates hoping to capitalize upon other people within their families, within their immediate families, for political gain. You have Jeb right now on the campaign trail with his fucking mom. Now she, I believe, is pushing 90. Barbara Bush. She's extremely, extremely old. She's also the most intelligent Bush, and she's the most intelligent Bush because she warned Jeb when he first considered running, you shouldn't run. You're going to make a fool of yourself. He did not listen to her. He has now circled the wagons. W's in a new ad for him. Now, imagine this. George W. Bush, one of the least popular presidents, one of the most inefficient, ineffective, idiotic presidents that we've had in the modern age, is now welcomed to make campaign ads for Jeb. That's how bad his campaign is failing. I don't think he's going to place in the top 4 in New Hampshire. I think he's going to continue to decline, and that within the next few days, especially after the next debate on the 6th, Jeb's going to take he's not going to be in the top 3, certainly. Probably he won't even place 4th in New Hampshire. Somebody else is going to supplant him. Trump and Cruz and Rubio are going to be the top 3 again. Everybody else at that point might start dropping like flies. In fact, it was unexpected. I didn't expect Rand Paul to drop out, and I'm actually slightly sad that he did. He had a better than expected showing. He fucked Bush. He could have fucked Bush again in New Hampshire. He decided to drop out. Well, his choice. I mourn the loss because it was nice having Rand Paul be there to be the voice of common sense within the GOP's nomination process. Now he's gone. The voice of common sense now is Donald Trump. Imagine that. That's perhaps not the most happy thing you could say about the nomination process going forward through New Hampshire and continuing thereupon. But then again, think about the Democratic field. Who's running there? There are only 2 people left. One of them's a socialist. One of them's a socialist who's, in his 70s. The other one's pushing 70. She's a really, really outdated old 90s era centrist neocon named Hillary Clinton. And Hillary, of course, has dragged Bill out. Now, Bill has lost all of his thunder. In the last half a decade or so, Bill has gone from still being able to speak fairly effectively. He's still all there. He's not like losing his mind with dementia or anything. He just doesn't quite have the snap that he used to have that really gave him the leverage he needed to be effective in campaigns, whether it's for his own presidency or Hillary's first run where she lost out to Obama. Or even a couple of years ago when Obama fucking dragged him up on stage. And, Obama still probably owes the Clintons a big-ass favor for that. Probably the favor is please don't indict Hillary till after the election when nobody will care anymore. Bill has lost all of that vigor that he used to have, much like if Jeb had been running for office long ago and dragged his brother up on stage when he was still known as a governor, and hadn't completely crapped on the entire nation as the U.S. president. And most Republicans, by the way, are fully aware of the fact that Bush was a failure, that Bush was a terrible thing not only for the country, but for the Republican Party as well, and helped them lose the election to Obama. If he had been running back then, people might have said, he's pretty tall, He's got some chops within politics. He seems like an okay dude, someone you'd have a drink with. But the Bush family name is now cursed. Anytime somebody hears Bush, what they think of is Iraq, and they think of Katrina, and they think of Bushisms. So they're either not taking the candidate seriously, not in a good way, like, oh, well, this candidate's funny. This candidate seems personable. No, this candidate seems fucking retarded. That's the problem for Jeb. Or they think of genocide. They think of trillions of dollars wasted and hundreds of thousands of lives taken. It's not a funny thing anymore to many people. Even back in the Bushisms era, I fell into this category. A lot of us were deeply concerned about Bush fucking up our relations with other countries. By the way, Obama has done very little to ameliorate the damage. In fact, he's made our problems with some countries arguably far worse, because he's just as fucking out there and delusional. You see Obama yesterday, oh, I'm going to go visit a mosque. What a great reparation for all the bigotry in this country. Oh, well, this will make people feel more included. No, you're just a fucking politician trying to score political points by going to a place of worship very publicly and then ranting about how your policies and your opinions and your interpretation of divine dogma are better than anybody else's. You're no different from somebody like Ted Cruz standing up on the goddamn stage and saying, praise Jesus for this great victory. Obama is exactly the fucking same. And by the way, Ted Cruz probably doesn't even care about your fucking God. He doesn't care about Jesus Christ. He cares about his wallet, and he cares about his name and his reputation and all the things politicians typically fucking care about. Obama's the same. They're exactly the same. They're just like a couple of fucking televangelists. They sit there up on stage and talk about praise Jesus this, praise Jesus that. Meanwhile, they're sinning constantly. And we know, we look at Ted Haggard or we look at, Pat Robertson or any of these other fools. They do the exact same thing. That sort of nonsense is slowly passing into the annals of history as something that we would rather forget. For Obama to come out and do the same thing a couple days after everyone's worried about Cruz going full Deus Vult up on stage. Like some fucking fire and brimstone minister when he's actually a fucking Canadian centrist who takes a bunch of money from big banks that support, they don't have a problem with Islam as long as they're getting money from Saudi Arabia or some other rich state, Qatar or something like that. For Obama to do that is just as retarded as anything Jeb's doing fucking right now. But I feel sorry for Jeb. I don't feel sorry for him for being stupid because, he's a Bush, so we can't. But anytime somebody is actually retarded, I'm not talking about, well, they act retarded, they do dumb things, or they're a klutz or something. I'm talking about when somebody is actually brain-addled, like Jeb Bush provably is, with how shittily he's handled his campaign. I'm going to feel sorry for them. And if they do terrible things like W did when he was being retarded, you can't really blame them because they're dumb. They're too dumb to understand that what they're doing is stupid. In many cases, you have somebody who's deeply mentally disturbed, like W, getting controlled by somebody else anyway, who tells him, yeah, you're great, everybody loves you, don't worry, now go play with your fucking colorful puzzles over there in the corner with your good friend Vladimir Putin, which is exactly like what Dick Cheney did with W, and I have no doubt that Jeb, because he's so fucking retarded, probably has some sort of handler pulling his strings, only the difference is, because he happens to have the last name of Bush, people remember that the last time you had sort of an easily handled retarded puppet up on stage talking to the American people in the capacity of the U.S. presidency, it didn't go so well. So Jeb's cursed. It's not because of his policies, because his policies are identical to those of Christie. They're similar to those of Cruz. They're almost completely identical to those of Rubio. And yet he's the one getting shit. He's behind Chris Christie right now. Chris Christie is a 300-pound Taft lookalike. What more can you possibly say about how crappy the Jeb Bush campaign is? And when he underperforms in New Hampshire, as I expect that he will, I expect Christie will probably edge him out for fourth place. When that happens, hopefully, finally, we can be rid of the stupidity of Jeb Bush. Because the nation doesn't want anybody named Bush in office. Most of us also do not want a Clinton in office. I have spoken with a very large, surprisingly large number of people, including a lot of young, very liberal females, who will not support Hillary under any circumstances because they think she's a liar and a hypocrite. She is. I mean, you don't have to think that. It's true. We can prove that. We know that she's lied on thousands of occasions in a capacity as a so-called public servant or representative. She lied as a senator. She lied as Secretary of State. She's lying as a candidate. She lied back when Bubba was in office. She was lying long before that. She's a habitual serial liar because to her it's all about her. She's a complete egomaniac. When people complain about Trump, oh, he's got a big ego, look to Hillary Clinton. Her ego is 10,000 times larger than that of Donald Trump. I hate to tell you this, but it's Hillary that's the real hypocrite up there on stage. And if she gets the nomination, a hell of a lot of people are either going to fucking stay home, or they're going to support the Republican Party, or they're going to vote third party. They're not going to support Hillary Clinton. She would have a doomed campaign. Hillary Clinton will never hold the office of the U.S. presidency. Even if she was physically and mentally fit and wasn't a complete hypocrite, she'd be at a disadvantage right now with the way things are going in the race. Record turnout on the GOP side, massive ratings in all the debates, as opposed to the Democratic side where it's really a yawn fest. I hate to say this, I don't think that Hillary is going to do well if she becomes the nominee. Unfortunately for the Democrats, I think you're going to lose this election because the DNC thinks she's the big money candidate. They probably don't even care if the Democrats win the election. They just want to soak up the money. So far, Bernie Sanders has pulled in relatively little for the DNC in the terms of big-name donors. They're all flocking to people like Donald Trump, to a small degree, or to a much larger degree, Marco Rubio. Marco Rubio is really the cash cow right now because he has Bush policies without the Bush name, and he's younger. And he seems more, let's say, literate when it comes to speaking and making himself known without making a bunch of verbal errors, as opposed to Jeb, who's really the slightly more verbally intelligent but much more inept George W. Bush. Never forget, though, before you feel too sorry for Jeb, please remember that George W. seemed very intelligent until the moment he took office. Then the retardation was truly on display. Why do you think that he did that? It was to deflect from his own failings so that people would focus on how cute or even if how awful he was. Oh, well, he didn't mean it. He's just fucking stupid. He's not actually corrupt. He's just a dumbass. Well, in politics, it's much better to be seen as a dumbass and occasionally surprise people by doing something that actually works than to be seen as completely corrupt. That's why George W. won re-election. That and the fact that his opponent was so boring. John Kerry's the most boring person on the face of the earth. Yeah, way more boring than Jeb is. Jeb is a laugh riot compared to somebody like John Kerry. So yeah, I feel slightly sorry for Jeb because he's truly is dumb, but I'm not going to feel too sorry for him because he's a fucking Bush. These are genocidal maniacs. Daddy Bush was a genocidal maniac. Granddaddy Bush was a literal traitor. Great-granddaddy Bush was a fucking mobster. I don't feel sorry for the Bush family. I think they deserve to be cursed. In fact, I think they deserve to be fucking homeless and penniless. Let's see how they fucking like it. Like what they brought upon millions of people within the U.S. economy with their mismanagement. Let's put them out of the fucking cold and see how they like it. And while we're at it, let's take all the rest of the fucking bums in D.C. and do the same thing. Let's see how many of them are still alive at the end of a month and haven't fucking starved to death or died of exposure. Ted might live. Ted Cruz might survive because he's from Canada, so he can take the cold. You put him out on the streets in New York City, he'll be wearing a t-shirt and complaining that he's sweating. Most of the others, after a couple of weeks or so, they'll fucking turn blue and keel over. That's about all. Peace out.